Bridgewater today. We have a special guest today, Learning in Action. This is the workshop schedule coming up today and every 2 months. So the next one will be July 25th. And the big thing coming up is the Community Energy Fair. Today, we're very happy to have Dr. Andrew Bagley here today. He's President and CEO of Nova Solar Capital, a solar project development company bringing together project design, financing, management, and materials in collaboration with third parties. He has extensive experience in finance, banking, risk management, business strategy, and business management. And Andrew has a BSc in physics and an MBA and a doctorate in business administration. And he's our guest speaker today. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Hi, well, thanks very much for inviting me today, and thanks, Leon, for organising everything. Fantastic. And I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about where we're going as a company in terms of how we see the landscape on solar financing. So I'll be talking a little bit about our project, then talking something about the economics of solar as it is at the moment, the trends of where it's going, and how we see kind of financing developing in the environment of solar and other renewable energies. So if we can just kind of go to the next slide. This is our company, which we actually established last year in Kentville. We have, well, it began, I guess, at the beginning of last year. I've been interested in renewable energy for a long time, but the thing really kind of jogged my attention was the fact that solar photovoltaic is actually currently pretty much at a par, just below parity actually, with grid-based electricity. And that's kind of a huge deal because as soon as you get to that point, you're approaching a point where you don't actually really need subsidies for solar. Solar so far has been a technology where you've had a lot of feed-in tariffs which have actually driven volume in the business. But feed-in tariffs have essentially been essential really to sort of drive the technology. And as soon as you actually approach a point of parity or below grid-based power, you're really in a world where subsidies, etc., will no longer be needed. That's a kind of huge inflection point in the industry. Solar as a technology is very much dependent on experience curve, which is where kind of cumulative output, the cost of production declines with cumulative output. And actually in solar, for each doubling of output, you get a 20% decline in cost. And so we've seen, decades, I guess, where feed-in tariffs and other incentives have actually driven volume from solar. This has brought down the cost. And we're now at a point where, if you look at, you calculate what's called the levelized cost of electricity for solar, it's something like about 13 cents a kilowatt hour. Nova Scotia Power's current rate is 15. So, it's kind of 2 cent saving, which is kind of not interesting in itself, but it's a huge milestone really, because from here on in, solar is just going to get cheaper and cheaper versus grid-based power. And as you get into that position, volumes will rise even more, driving everything down the experience curve even further. And in fact, it's really being expected that by the middle of the next decade, solar PV will be the cheapest form of electricity bar none. I mean, it's just the prices will become cheaper than gas, wind, you name it, anything out there, solar's going to be cheaper, solar PV. So we established the company actually in October. We launched our series in early December and November. We have 5 employees in the company, and I would say the backgrounds of the people, we're very strong in finance, marketing, legal and general management, and I suppose also in strategic overview as to where the world is at the moment. And as a company, we have kind of strong community groups. I'm from the UK, obviously, but as a group, we've been here for over 10 years, and We know lots of people in the community, and I think the other thing we've seen, since we launched the project, we've actually seen tremendous kind of outreach from the community to us, because there's really huge interest in solar and renewable energy. So if we can just go to the next slide. So, you know, what we've kind of taken a slightly different mission as a company from most solar companies. I guess it comes from my background, I suppose, being in finance, but the kind of obvious thing with a solar business is to be an installer. I mean, people want it on their roofs. But we've actually taken a different tack, really, which I suppose, in a sense, comes from the kind of incentives there are in Nova Scotia. You have the CDIF. There's a fantastic instrument for launching capital-oriented businesses. If you take Ontario, there's been a lot of where you have feed-in tariffs. That kind of incentive structure drives installation volume, and so you see a lot of installers, and it's actually quite fragmented as a business. There's actually more than 200 installers in Ontario. But our tack has been to say we want to be a kind of capital-oriented company, raising funds and doing mass installation of solar, and taking advantage of the kind of strategic change in terms of financing of solar, which I hope to sort of demonstrate as we go on through this presentation. So our role is actually identifying projects and creating those projects. You know, we put the CDIP together, we've launched our CDIP project, it's engendered a lot of interest in the community, and so we want to both identify and create projects. We want to identify financing for those and bring together all the things that are needed to actually bring those kind of projects into realisation. And we're looking at kind of big projects. I mean, our current CDIP is a $3 million CDIP, so that's, you know, basically like 100 homes, 100 plus homes being solar. Just as a measure of that, it will actually increase this one project actually increases the installed base of solar in the province by 60%. You know, all the time, you know, 1 year it would actually be an increase of 60% in solar actually installed in Nova Scotia. So we're bringing together finance, human resources, material resources, and management to bring these projects to realisation. And the other thing I think we also want to do is to bring up, give Nova Scotia a high value-added player in the solar game. Nova Scotia, we've kind of been a bit left behind. I mean, because in Ontario there's been quite substantial feed-in tariffs to install solar on roofs. We still don't have any incentive at all in Nova Scotia, other than actually the CDIP, and this is why we launched the CDIP, to create, you might say, our own form of incentives for installing solar. So, you know, what we want to do is create a company which has a different kind of strategy in the marketplace, which is particularly high value added, and, you know, give Nova Scotia a part of this renewable energy rollout, which is actually definitely, you know, going to be coming to Nova Scotia. Well, it's coming now, and we don't do it, some country from Ontario do it, so this is our opportunity. So if you could just go to the next slide. So in terms of kind of strategic overview of where the industry stands in Nova Scotia at the moment, this is all you might say the market segments of solar in the province. So you're going to have mass retail, which isn't really a segment because you just created it, you might say. You've got industrial applications, public sector, and individual retail. And this is really the kind of substantial area that kind of exists in Nova Scotia at the moment. And what we have is installers selling basically to individual retailers, installing solar on people's homes. They buy their hardware. All that hardware actually at the moment all comes from Ontario. There isn't actually a solar distribution company in Nova Scotia. And the financing for this actually doesn't come from installers at all, because none of the installers actually really offer financing. It all actually comes from banks. So, you know, I would say something like about at least 90% of the market is this. And then there may be the odd kind of industrial application. I mean, IKEA's coming in, I think October or something like that. But they're going to have a very large solar installation. But basically the market at present stands as being individual installers, of which there may be 8, maybe up to 6 or 8, that kind of number, most of whom aren't actually dedicated solar installers because there's just not the volume of business. Most of them do solar hot water, and there are a general electrical contract as well. So really, it's kind of very much an industry which is kind of, it's really scarcely exists, frankly. There's 8 small companies, maybe employing 2 or 3 big side. I mentioned that this is the trajectory of solar costs, and solar's actually gone down about 70% in cost over the last, since the beginning of the decade, 75%. So you can see that there's been this rapid decline in costs, and it's really expected to continue. So we are somewhere like about here. We're looking at solar approximately coming down by maybe another a third to the middle of the next decade. And at that point, solar becomes really the cheapest form of energy that's sort of out there. And this is the way the cost breakdown is. One of the issues really in solar has been the size of this installation, which is this sort of, they're called soft costs, which actually make quite a large element of installation get through. Yeah, I mean, the CEF in a way kind of addresses one of the fundamental problems we have with solar, which is there's a fairly long-term payoff in solar. It's quite expensive. You pay for it basically by saying, hey, I don't have to buy power from Nova Scotia Power anymore. And but that's a kind of incremental, kind of drip kind of concept. And you're typically looking at fairly short-term financing. If a solar installation lasts for 25 or 30 years, you can, I think we do 10 years, right? Do you have your program?
Our financing program is 10 years.
Yeah, okay, as is Solar City. But when you actually look at a 30-year potentially generating asset, 10 years is really quite a small fraction of its generating life. And typically, if you look at, say, businesses, equity is quite expensive. Companies are very loath to start investing equity in these things. And we have no subsidies for solar in Nova Scotia. So it's kind of, the problem with solar is that you have this long time that it kind of generates power. And when you're looking at present at, say, 2 cents a kilowatt hour saving, it's kind of a lot of money to put up for a kind of incremental benefit. So if you could just give me the next slide. So this is kind of looking at a system where it's almost a small commercial installation, generates something like 45,000 kilowatt hours, which is equivalent to 3 large houses. The cents per watt is the dollars per watt of the installation, just over $3. And you can see that you're actually looking at year 14, it kind of becomes positive. So the interest rate charge, so basically in the situation, the person gone to the bank, said, hey, I'd like to borrow $100,000, put this installation on my roof. They say, fine, just pay it back when, as the cash generates, let's say. It's not a term loan, it's just like a loan facility. As the system generates money through power savings, that is what's used to pay off the loan. So you get this sort of gradual decline of the loan balance as you get the benefit of the savings from the solar. And it actually becomes kind of cash positive in year 14. You can see, here we've invested $100,000 and a 5% increase in Nova Scotia power rates, which is what it has been for the last decade. You're looking at this project generating something like $280,000 of profit, cumulatively, over the 30-year life of the installation. So, solar's great in this respect. I mean, 3.8% is, this is actually the farm credit interest rate. Sorry.
If a company were to borrow $100,000 to do a job like that, they would be able to use that on their income tax as a 50% deduction on any green energy.
That's
So
true.
that's a big thing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah, sure. This is just purely looking at the economics rather than the tax angle, but
Yeah.
absolutely right. I mean, tax is key. as we've
Yes,
seen.
very much so.
So it's kind of good, you know, but 14 years is a fair time to wait for your money. And if we look at the next slide, you can see that this highlights the problem of short-term financing. So here, the blue is actually a 10-year loan. So it's like saying it's equal payments. It's a bit like a lease, if you will, over 10 years. And basically what's happening is that over that 10-year period, there's not enough power generation savings from the solar actually to pay the loan. So what's happening is that the red is actually the amount of equity or the company's own resources that it's actually having to invest in order to realise the loan repayments as they come along. So you know, there's a fixed schedule of equal payments for 10 years. The solar's on the roof generating electricity at the rate it does. Unfortunately, the solar doesn't generate enough electricity to give the benefit to meet those loan payments as they come due. So what's happening is the company is actually having to sort of reach into its own pocket to subsidise this installation on the roof. And the problem is that, you know, if you have a business, equity is fairly expensive, it's drawing resources from the main business, and 2 cents a kilowatt hour, people say, well, I don't know, it's kind of interesting, but not that interesting, and it's a fixed investment of $100,000, resources tied up, add to risk my situation, do I really want to do that? But again, you can see that over time, you know, you're still looking at this project being quite profitable. It's like $270,000 cumulative benefit over 30 years. But this is the problem. You know, companies say, look, I'm a farmer, I've got a chicken farm. Do I really want to start, you know, investing this amount of money and taking these risks to install a solar on my property? Yes, it pays in the long term, but there's this awkward, you know, interim period when people are trying to reach into their pocket to subsidise the solar on their roof. If we just have the next slide. So this is exactly the same situation, but what we're looking at here is actually a 25-year amortization of the loan. So it says, okay, it's a 30-year, 30-year generating asset. Let's finance this over the expected lifetime of this generation. And so the outgoings per year are much smaller. And you can see actually from year one, it's positive. So the solar, if you have a longer term financing, the power savings from the generation actually give enough cash to meet the amortizations as they come due. So nobody's actually having to reach into their pocket at all. And you can see the cumulative benefit to the company is much larger. They're having to withdraw money from their existing business. So it kind of gives an attractive option for a business where they're not actually having to make this trade-off of drawing resources from their existing business to subsidise or to invest into the energy generation, because they're actually able to do it entirely through a financing to achieve that. Is that kind of clear? I don't know.
There's actually a local analogy, which is that our clean energy financing program is designed so that the payback for the system is less than the amortization period.
Yes.
So we generate this for homeowners. They're
Yeah,
cash flow
exactly.
positive starting in year one.
Yeah.
Halifax's Solar City program, by contrast, the payback on the install is longer than the amortization period, and so
Yeah.
they would be the first graph.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's you know, there's no reason that we have to stick with a 10-year payback. We can do much larger upgrades if we can extend that payback period.
Yes, exactly.
So from my perspective, what Andrew's describing is exactly the kind of thinking we need to get through the energy transition.
The thing is that if you look at solar PV as an investment prospect and what its characteristics are, it's a known and low risk investment. You know how much a solar panel costs. You know what the installation. It's not rocket science. It's almost like roofing. We know exactly pretty much what the economics are of the cost of an installation. Contrast with Muskrat Falls, for example, which is actually overrun by 90%. Solar is just like totally known. I mean, you buy a solar installation, you know how much it's going to cost you. It has a predictable energy output, electricity output. We know what the orientation is. We know how much sun shines on average a year, so you know how electricity is going to be generated. It has a predictable and low operating cost. Once it's there, it's a passive technology which runs and generates electricity. You have a real asset for security. So if you go to a bank, you can say, we have this installation installed in this field, we'd like to finance it. You have a real asset with which you could actually obtain secure financing. You have a low technology risk. The technology is known and understood. Yes, the costs are declining, but the technology, there's very little in the way of technology risk. And it can be very large scale. I mean, I don't know if people have seen pictures of some of the installations in China, and they're tiling the Gobi Desert, as I understand it, basically. And so, if you kind of put all of this together, you say, well, we know how much money goes in, we know for certain pretty much what the generation of electricity that's coming out is. So we have a kind of a fixed investment and a fixed income. So it really looks very much like a sort of fixed income interest stream. It's a bit like investing in a bond. You might say, if you have a bond, you say, I put this amount in, and it generates this amount of income yield for me as an investment. And that's basically what solar looks like as a concept. And solar's not alone in this. You've got wind, hydro, not so much in terms of the risk of the investment, but also battery backup systems as well. You know what the thing's going to cost, how much it's going to put on the grid, what the revenue from that installation would be over its life. So a lot of these, I would say, hydro is a bit questionable, but wind, battery backup, and solar are all technologies where the returns can look very big. There's another thing just to briefly touch on, which is that if you look at the yield on bond portfolios, I say, who has lunch, me or my bond fund manager, because the yields on bonds have actually pretty much halved since before the financial crisis, and they actually were down like 60% until the end of last year. And so you have a situation really where bond fund managers are saying, well, look, at the moment we as a bond fund manager take half of people's income from their bond portfolios. And it was before the crisis a quarter, which is not great, but that's life. But half is really quite a difficult situation. And so what this means, so bond yields are down 50-60% in a decade. If you look worldwide, 70% of Japanese bonds were actually on negative yields. You actually got less back from the investment that you put in. 2/3 of German government bonds were on negative yields. So we live in this world now where there's capital there, which is kind of desperately looking for yield, for a way of actually giving people retirement income. And what's the implication of this? Well, money has to work for a living. You can't just sort of stick in a government bond and get sort of a nice 4.5% yield. That money has to be people have to think, how can we invest this money in a way actually that generates a real income by doing real things? And if you put that in the context of solar, solar's a great investment. It has all of these desirable properties of you know how much it's going to cost, you know what the income's going to be, you have all the security. It generates very much a fixed income kind of yield. And we're living in this world where bond managers say, how are we going to make a living? So if I just have the next slide. So there's been various structures been put together to benefit from this. One is called a yield co, where you have public shareholders, you have a parent company, which would be, say, electric utility. They launch this yield co, which they control through the shareholder structure. The public shareholders invest in this, and those funds are then invested actually in the solar installation. That generates a fixed income yield back to the public shareholders. And this has been used quite widely actually for renewable energy. In fact, Canada's Brookfield Renewable Energy is the world's largest yield co. So we actually have them here in Canada. If we could go to the next one. But there is actual general institutional interest in renewable energies because of these properties I've described. So you've got the Alberta Investment Management recently bought Fir Tree Partners solar unit in order to achieve this yield. Fiera Infrastructure, I think Fiera is based in Montreal, they bought the solar and wind assets of D. Shaw Renewable Investments in April, and they're saying they're going to buy more of this in 2017. Hancock Life in the US bought 49% of US electricity utility Exelon's clean energy portfolio. Macquarie, as a huge business, putting together renewable energy financings and utility financing generally because of the stability characteristics I've described. The UK has seen closed-end funds, which are basically companies which raise money, invest that money acquiring minimum solar assets. And according to the OECD, pension funds, insurance companies, private equity, infrastructure funds increased their share of the European wind sector funding from 6% in 2010 to 37% in 2015. So what we're saying is that the financial world, because of the pressures of low yields and its hunt for yield, is actually recognizing what we're saying, which is that the characteristics of renewables with their kind of fixed income, very understood, defined investment costs are actually searching and very interested in funding renewable energy projects. The next slide.
Do we, is it possible to wrap up?
Yeah, this final slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, look out for us, I guess, with takeaways. The cost means solar PV is going to be at least as common as wind by the middle of the next decade. Renewables need long-term financing. You can see the benefits of the economics of long-term financing. We've got kind of eye-watering low interest rates. And this means that asset managers need new long-term assets, as I've described. And the predictable cost and production of renewables are attracting growing institutional attention as asset managers look for that yield within the renewable energy.
Thank you very much.
I'm finished over there.
We're going to take about a 10-minute networking break, but before we